Okay, so you want to escape a sinking submarine. You have seen the movies. The hero punches out a hatch, swims hard toward a distant circle of light, and breaks the surface gasping but alive. Here is the problem. Almost everything that scene shows you is wrong. Not slightly wrong, completely wrong. Because the physics of what actually happens inside a flooding submarine, what water pressure does to a human body, what your lungs do when you ascend too fast, and what the difference between a survivable escape and a fatal one actually looks like, has almost nothing to do with what you have been shown. And that gap between the movie version and the real version is exactly where people die. Before we talk about survival, we must first clarify what specifically constitutes this problem. Because escaping a submarine is not one problem. It is at least 4 completely different problems stacked on top of each other, each one capable of killing you independently. There is the flooding problem, there is the pressure equalization problem, there is the ascent problem, and there is the decompression problem. Miss any one of them and it does not matter how well you handle the others. Most people focus entirely on the flooding, which is the most visible part, and completely ignore the 3 that are more likely to finish them. A submarine operating at a depth of just 30 meters is subject to a pressure of approximately 4 atmospheres at the hull. That means the water pressing against every square inch of that submarine is carrying 4 times the force of the air you are breathing right now. At 100 meters, that number climbs to 11 atmospheres. At 200 meters, it exceeds 21. When a hull breach occurs and water begins entering a compartment, it does not trickle. At depth, incoming seawater arrives with the full force of that ambient pressure behind it. A breach the size of a dinner plate at 100 meters delivers water with enough force to flatten a person against a bulkhead in seconds. This is the first thing most people get wrong about submarine flooding. The instinct is to fight it, to plug it, to hold something against the breach. In a real flooding event at any meaningful depth, you are not fighting that water. You are managing your relationship to the pressure it is equalizing. The goal inside a flooding compartment is not to stop the water. The goal is to let the compartment flood to the point where internal pressure matches external pressure, because that is the only condition under which you can actually open the escape hatch. A hatch that has 11 atmospheres of seawater pressing against it from the outside cannot be opened by human strength. It requires the pressure inside the compartment to equalize with the pressure outside, which means you have to let the water in, all the way. Here is what that actually means in practice. The crew member preparing for a free ascent escape must position themselves in the flooding compartment, typically a dedicated escape tower in modern submarines, and wait while cold seawater rises around them. Not ankle deep, not waist deep, to the point where the air pocket above is compressed enough to match the sea pressure at the hull. In a standard escape tower roughly 1.5 meters in diameter, that equalization process takes somewhere between 90 seconds and 4 minutes, depending on depth. The water temperature in most operational submarine environments runs between 2 and 10 degrees Celsius. At those temperatures, cold shock response begins within 30 seconds of immersion. Meaningful physical impairment from cold sets in within minutes. The escape procedure has to be completed before the body loses the coordination to complete it. Now comes the ascent, and this is where the second major misunderstanding lives. The instinct when you finally get that hatch open is to swim hard, to kick, to get to the surface as fast as possible. That instinct is also wrong. A person ascending from 30 meters while holding their breath and swimming hard will arrive at the surface with lungs that have expanded from roughly 1/4 of their original volume back to full. That expansion is survivable if the air is allowed to escape. If someone holds their breath during ascent, the expanding air has nowhere to go. Pulmonary barotrauma results. The lung tissue tears, air enters the bloodstream. Arterial gas embolism develops, and it kills in minutes. The correct technique during a free ascent is to exhale continuously, not to hold a lungful of air, to let it bleed out the entire way up, because the remaining air in your lungs is still expanding as pressure drops and it will expand faster than you expect. The distance from 30 meters to the surface takes a trained, fit person swimming hard approximately 45 to 60 seconds. From 100 meters, that ascent time climbs to somewhere between 3 and 6 minutes depending on buoyancy and stroke efficiency. Modern submarine escape suits used by NATO navies incorporate a built-in hood that traps a breathing gas bubble, which gives the escaping crew member something to breathe during ascent, and slows the rate of lung expansion somewhat. Without that suit, from anything beyond roughly 30 meters, the margin between a survivable ascent and a fatal one narrows very quickly. Then there is the decompression problem, and this is the one that kills people who think they already survived. Nitrogen dissolves into blood and tissue under pressure. The deeper you are and the longer you have been there, the more nitrogen is dissolved into your body. When pressure drops rapidly during ascent, that nitrogen comes out of solution. If the ascent is fast, which an emergency submarine escape always is, nitrogen bubbles form in the bloodstream and in joint tissue. Decompression sickness at its most severe causes neurological damage, spinal cord injury, and death. A crew member who successfully escapes from 100 meters and reaches the surface alive is not safe. They're in a window where decompression illness is developing. Without hyperbaric treatment within hours, the damage accumulates. The Royal Navy has documented survivable escapes from depths approaching 180 meters using the Mk-10 escape immersion suit, which is currently the most capable individual escape system in operational use. The suit provides thermal protection, a breathing hood, and a life preserver that activates automatically at the surface. Training for its use takes place in escape towers, at facilities like the Submarine Escape Training Tank in Gosport, England, a 30-meter deep facility where crews practice the pressure equalization and ascent sequence under controlled conditions before they ever board an operational boat. That training exists because the procedure is counterintuitive enough that untrained crew members consistently make fatal errors, even when they have the correct equipment. Beyond individual escape, most modern military submarines carry one or more escape systems at the collective level. Rescue chambers, also called rescue bells, are pressure vessels that can mate with a downed submarine's escape hatch while it sits on the seafloor. The chamber equalizes with the submarine's interior pressure. The crew transfers inside, and the bell ascends to a surface support vessel. The window in which survivors can realistically wait in a downed submarine, assuming the atmosphere remains breathable and the hull holds, is roughly 72 to 96 hours before carbon dioxide buildup and oxygen depletion make the interior compartments unsurvivable. What makes submarine escape fundamentally different from almost every other emergency survival scenario is that the most dangerous part is not the disaster itself. It is the sequence of counterintuitive choices that follow. Every human instinct in a flooding compartment tells you to fight the water. Fighting it kills you. Every instinct on the way to the surface tells you to hold your breath. Holding it kills you. Every instinct after you surface tells you to rest. Resting while decompression illness develops can also kill you. The procedure works when it is followed precisely and in sequence. It fails when people improvise. The deepest confirmed individual free ascent survival in documented naval history occurred at approximately 60 meters, a depth at which the physiological demands of the procedure push against the outer edge of what an unassisted human body can tolerate. At 90 meters and beyond, unaided individual escape becomes statistically unsurvivable without purpose-built equipment. Which is why modern submarine design treats escape not primarily as an individual act, but as a system, a combination of hull integrity standards, escape trunk design, collective rescue capability, and crew training that together constitute the actual survival plan. The individual suit and the flooding procedure are the last resort. The system around them is what most of the engineering budget is actually protecting. The Kursk disaster in August 2000 placed all of this into direct focus for naval architects and rescue planners worldwide. 23 crew members survived the initial explosions and reached the aft escape compartment. They were alive, the compartment was intact, and they had working equipment. The rescue systems that responded, both Russian and later international, were unable to mate with the submarine's escape hatch within the survival window. The 23 died not because the escape compartment failed, but because the external rescue response was too slow, and the submarine's own rescue buoy, designed to automatically release on sinking and mark the location, had been welded in place during routine maintenance and never deployed. A single maintenance decision made years before the emergency removed the one marker that would have accelerated the rescue timeline. That is how precise the margin is.